Who? Terence Crawford versus Earl Spence. Is it gonna happen? Everybody is wondering about this. And people are getting kind of frustrated and getting pissed off just due to the fact that it's been months and pretty much we haven't heard anything. And I think have gotten to the point where they just want to know. It's like, yo, if it's gonna happen, cool. If it's not, just effing say it's gonna happen so we can just move on. And people are kind of moving on a little bit. People are starting to talk a lot more about. I don't see people necessarily talking about the fight in the same frequency as they used to. People kind of, because a lot of different events are starting to pop up. So, people are starting to get kind of focused on those events. So it's like this big, huge lull in boxing, but we weren't really getting anything that was really spectacular that people really wanted to see like that for a couple of months. So pretty much a lot of the talk in the airwaves was about that particular fight, Terence Crawford versus Earl Spence. But, there's a lot of different things happening now. You got Clarissa Shields that's fighting this weekend. You had Andy Ruiz and Ortiz fighting last weekend. You had Usyk and Joshua fight happen. You got Deontay Wilder that's coming up next month. We know that Tank is fighting in December. Haney's fighting for Kambosos, and it's big. Not the fight itself; no one really cares about that fight, but it's more of like, all right, get this out of the way, and we want to see what's happening next. I think it's more that, is he going to fight Lomachenko? Is he going to move up to 140 pounds? Which, if it does, that's cool, as long as he fights Josh Taylor. And if he stays at 135, it's cool if you don't fight Lomachenko, as long as you fight, Shakur Stevenson. Two fights that no one's talking about for whatever reason that's available to him. But that's another big video that we'll talk about later. But anyway, as far as, so people are talking about other fights that are coming up now. Like, boxing's starting to get hot again. And there's a lot of different interesting things that are starting to happen again. So that, and I think people have gotten also to the point where it's kind of like, nah, we don't believe it's going to happen. People kind of like, I think that's the thing. A lot of people kind of don't really believe it's going to happen. So they're kind of just moving on. And all the parties are kind of quiet about it. Earl Spence is very quiet about it. Terence Crawford, he's been seen and he's going to different events and, just promoting himself. And some people are thinking that, hey, maybe it has something to do with, promoting himself because there's fights coming up. I don't think that's what it is at all. He has a different management company that he did sign to, and they're not dumb. They're looking at him saying, hey, we try to, get this this deal done with the zone. It didn't work. This other place over here, as far as Top Rank, is not really a big option for you. You need to put yourself into a space where you're seen. He's by himself. You don't have any thing behind you like a Top Rank or a PBC or whatever it is. It's just you. So since it's you got to promote your brand. You got to promote yourself. You got to keep, yourself in the news where people talk about you, because that is important when it comes to you trying to get a deal with whoever it is that you might do a multi-fight deal with. If this fight with Earl Spence doesn't work out, you need to start looking at what are the steps that I need to make in order to secure myself, a multi-fight deal or a future in the sport, and especially with what I'm trying to get monetarily per fight. So I think that's what that has to do with. It has nothing to do with the Earl Spence fight, really, to be honest. I really don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's more of his management company saying, hey, let's get ourselves out there. So if this doesn't work out here with the Earl Spence thing, we can still look at maybe these other different options, and we can also still keep ourselves in the limelight and keep ourselves being talked about, and let's not put ourselves into a space where we're just completely forgotten about because we don't have that machine behind us anymore that's keeping us relevant, or where we're not in a situation where we know we got 2 fights definitely coming in every single year and we're going to get paid this amount of money. It's different. You got to work for your money now. You're going to have to put some effort into it now, not just in the ring, but also outside of the ring. So that's what I think that has to do with, that's why he's doing that. But as far as this fight's concerned, I will say, as long as both parties are pretty much staying quiet the way they are, I think it's a positive thing. Terence Crawford has talked a little bit. He's not talking crazy, brash, super disrespectful, anything like that. So I think that's a positive thing. Earl Spence has just been silent. And I think the further it goes, it's kind of weird, like just due to the fact that it's already September, almost basically flowing into the middle of September. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's 50-50. It's 50-50. I just don't, my only thing is that if it doesn't happen, I'm not sure who exactly Earl Spence would fight and when he would fight them. As far as this year is concerned, the one person that I thought that he might be fighting, because he was talking about going up to 154 pounds, was Fandora. I was seeing it because we had what's his name? We had Charlo, who was talking about that he would be cool with dropping a belt, at 154, so Spence could fight for that belt or for two belts. And that would have been perfect, him dropping the WBC belt, having that be vacant. Fandor is the number one mandatory for the WBC, or the number one contender. So him fighting against Earl Spence for that belt late in November on pay-per-view, especially with the performance Fandor just had and the performance that Earl Spence had just had, I thought that would be a big fight. And I thought that, to me personally, would have made the most sense. But Fandora is scheduled to fight, so that means no Fandora. So the only real fight that I could see, right now, honestly, would have been a Keith Thurman fight. Would basically be him staying down at 147, or him still going up to 154, and Keith Thurman going up to 154. As much as he doesn't want to do that fight monetarily, I think that's only right now the one big fight that they could give to him, where he's going to make the funds that he wants to make off a fight, is that fight. So that's the only one I pretty much can see. In Terrence Crawford, nothing. I think it's a situation where if this fight doesn't work for him, he's in dire straits. Because the zone's not working with him. You got Top Rank that's not working with them, and they're going to be in a space where PBC's not working with you, because PBC's not going to put out the same. They're not going to dealing with you as far as your difficulty with negotiating with you when it comes to Earl Spence, because Earl Spence wants this fight to happen. But if that fight doesn't happen, they're not going to go through the same mess with you when it comes to the other fights. They're not going to do that. And they're setting up kind of like everybody in the welterweight division in a space where they can go after all the other belts once Earl Spence leaves. So then they can have this, huge thing with unifications, with championship fights and unifications at 147 pounds at PBC. That's what they're kind of doing. And they don't need to include you in that. So I think he'd be in dire straits when it comes to that. And then he's talked about having the fight later on. Well, when we can do it later on. Later on, it's not going to be the same. Because later on, the Undisputed is not going to be in the line anymore. Later on, you're not going to have that same leverage that you have right now. The reason why you're being offered what you're being offered right now, they want to negotiate with you, is because of the fact that, it's going to be for Undisputed. Two, undefeated fighters fighting for Undisputed, because they're the two best fighters at 147 pounds going up against each other. If that's not available anymore, and Earl Spence moves up, things are going to be different. Things are going to be completely different. They're not going to negotiate with you as long. They're not going to deal with your difficulty as much. And you're not going to be offered the same amount. It's going to be a situation where it's going to be like, hey, you got to stand on your own merit. What are your gates? What are your pay-per-views? What do you generate? It's pretty much going to be that type of situation where the splits are not going to be the same. When you say no, it's going to be like, all right, cool. And they're going to just move on to the next fight. And you're going to still not be fighting. Or fighting where, I don't know, maybe in Europe somewhere, or in Dubai, I guess, something like that. I'm not sure exactly what he would do, just because he has the person that he had setting up everything from, as far as fighting in Europe, in Dubai, whatever, he can't do anything. He's on the run. His company has been shut down. So that's no longer, an option for him anymore. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how everything would work with Terrence Crawford, but he is being smart. He's going out there, he's putting his face out there. He's putting himself into a situation, people are talking about him. And I don't know, maybe his management team, has some kind of angle, or they can work something out that, we might not, necessarily see or know right now. That's also a possibility. But I will say, there still is a possibility that this fight does get made, especially it being pushed into November. The time frame being now pushed into September. It's already in September, going towards the middle of September. As far as happening this year, I don't know about that. I think it's just maybe. I don't know how to. If it was going to happen in November, end of November, something like that, they would have to, let us pretty much confirm this fight within the next week or so. If it was going to happen in December, which I don't see it happening, they would have to confirm this fight within the next 2 weeks or so. They would need to have things get done. If this fight gets done, me personally, I think it's going to be a situation where it gets pushed back to February. I'm thinking the fight will probably happen around February or March, something like that. I'm thinking February. I'm thinking February, because I think if Deontay Wilder is able to win in October, What they're probably going to do is have Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz in May. That's what I think is going to happen. You're going to have Andy Ruiz versus Deontay Wilder in May. So I don't see a Crawford Spence fight happening in May. So the month that I'm thinking of them fighting is probably going to be February, if it happens. But either way, we should know shortly, though. We should know probably, I can't see it lasting any more than probably 1 or 2 more weeks to get confirmation of whether we're going to have this fight or not. But we'll see. Like, subscribe, share. I'm out.